If you've ever been underdog curious, use code Mayo right now. You get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000 and also unlock a free pick for Sunday Night Football. Joe Burrow free pick. Pair that up with Wendell Robinson and Darius Slayton hires. You got 6 times your money, all right? So go and make that deposit right now using code Mayo to unlock that free square for all first-time players. Huge injury report coming up, so hit the time codes if you want to jump along, and the rankings list is down in the description, all right? Let's go!
Now entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog Week 6. Rankings update, injury report, underdog plays, and DraftKings ownership and values. If you are looking for the rankings cheat sheet, it's all updated down in the description right now. If you subscribe to the Mayo Media newsletter where the rankings are hosted, you'll get the brand new update sent out to you with all of the final information on Saturday evening, along with an updated injury report because we're still waiting on Bills and Jets from Saturday to figure out what's going on for Monday Night Football. And maybe, just maybe, we'll get some more clarity on the 5 or 6 guys that are game time decisions. This is the first week where it's been absolutely bonkers in terms of the injury report, and so much can change even on a Sunday morning. Probably post-London game, pre-lock, that you might have to be keeping up to date on all of that to begin with. But let's start with the London game. There's not really much from the Bears side of things that is of a concern. Injury-wise, the Jags have a decent run defense, a terrible pass defense, and on the other side, the Bears have an excellent pass defense and a terrible run defense. The spread right now is -1. This is my gold pick of the week. I love the Bears in this game. I think that they're wildly mismatched teams. Everyone else seems to be on Jacksonville, though, so take that with a grain of salt. For my underdog plays for the London game, you want to get a head start on the week early. You can do that with code Mayo or scanning the screen right now with that QR code. That will get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. I like Caleb Williams over his passing total, higher than 143.5 passing yards in this game. It's going to be tough to figure out exactly where everything is going. Like DJ Moore, you would expect to have a big play or two, but it could be an Adunze game. It could be a Keenan Allen game. And hell, Cole Kmet could get involved. If you wanted to make this a 3-pick entry, I would add the Cole Kmet higher receiving yards in it. But I'll just do the 2-banger for 3-1 on your money right now. So Caleb Williams higher than his passing total, and Christian Kirk lower than his receiving total. He has gone over this number, well over actually, in the past 3 games. But looking at the injury report right now, Gabe Davis is questionable. He is expected to play. Evan Ingram is questionable. He's expected to play. So we're just throwing more pass catchers on the field. And with the way that the defense sets up for the Bears, they've been pretty locked down against receivers anyway, especially where Christian Kirk plays on the field. I'd be more enticed with Brian Thomas going higher than his total, but I just think that with Evan Ingram back, taking away a lot of the cheap catches that Christian Kirk ends up getting, unless he can sneak behind the defense like he did last week, I'm pretty confident in the lower on him this week. We have it rated out as a 68% winner at Run the Sim, so I'm going with it. Caleb Williams, higher passing yards. Christian Kirk, lower on his receiving yards. Travis Etienne is expected to play as well with his shoulder injury, but in terms of running back rankings, he is outside the top 15, just inside the top 20, with Tank Bigsby being inside the top 25. Expect a split in that scenario where Tank Bigsby is breaking a bunch of tackles in this game, but part of my rankings are that I try to go with the game flow of what I think is going to happen, and I think the Bears can jump out to I don't want to say a big lead here, but play from ahead, forcing the Jags to pass a little bit more, so maybe not as much opportunity on the ground for Bigsby, whereas Etienne will most likely be used in the receiving game. Why Etienne is above Tank Bigsby this week. The full injury report. So here we go. Running back. Jordan Mason got injured on Thursday night. He tried to come back. He had 1 carry, said his shoulder hurt too much. He has an AC joint sprain in his shoulder, 10 days off. He might play in week 7, but it's looking a bit iffy at the moment. So check the practice report next week against the Chiefs. It could be enough time for him to be okay to reclaim the starting role in this offense. For Sunday, Jonathan Taylor is out, so Trey Sermon is going to start with Goodson working as the backup. Trey Sermon right now I have as running back number, where are you at, Trey Sermon? Trey Sermon is running back number 24 25, for the week. So just outside of a running back 2 territory. The Tennessee run D is actually quite good, and that's a pretty 50-50 type game. And with Anthony Richardson expected to start as well, probably fewer dump-offs to Trey Sermon. Expect those to be Anthony Richard rushing attempts in that spot. So it's going to be touchdown or bust for Sermon, it looks like, in this game. Cordero Patterson is out for the Steelers, but it looks like Jaylen Warren is going to play for the Steelers against the Ravens. So I did bump down Najee to running back number 17 right now. Wouldn't touch Warren in this game, knowing that his chance of re-aggravation is pretty high, and he's probably not completely healthy coming into the game, so his workload might be a bit diminished here. Zamir White is leaning out for that same game for the Raiders. Not officially out as of yet, so I put Alexander Mattison at number 28. Because he's not good. So that's a problem going up against a pretty tough defense as well. He's a lot like Sermon, where it's touchdown or bust for him, but he's more than likely going to do far less on the ground in terms of overall bulk totals. He might end up getting to 15 rushing attempts, maybe, and that might be good for 50 yards at best, unless something like all the Steelers run into each other and they all fall down and he runs past them. Amir Abdullah might be actually the one to play in full point PPR formats for the Raiders in the backfield if White is out, if they fall behind in this game, because as we've seen, when Madison was starting a week ago, it was Amir Abdullah who was working primarily on third down and in catch-up situations and on passing downs, which again really limits the upside of Madison. They are 3-point underdogs at home with Aiden O'Connell starting at quarterback against the Steelers this week. Devin Singletary, that's Sunday Night Football, so we're not necessarily going to know this. I don't have Devin Singletary in my running back rankings right now. From practice reports on Friday, where he did get into limited practice, he just was not looking good out there, per the reporters. Now, maybe he's fine. So you can't always take that with 100% accuracy. Hopefully we'll get a Schefter bomb or a Rappaport bomb overnight saying that they know one way or another. But the problem with this is, where it is Sunday Night Football, you're not going to have all this decision to come on your hands. So it looks like I have Tyrone Tracy Jr. at number 22 in the running back rankings right now. But that's a hedge that Singletary information may not be known. If we know the Singletary information that he is most definitely out for that game against the Bengals, I would move Tracy up to number 14 in the running back rankings, one spot behind J.K. Dobbins, one spot ahead of Rico Dowdle. The problem being that you can't bank on that. There's enough guys who are similar in between that I've put him down in the rankings. So if you have Chase Brown or Javonte Williams or Joe Mixon or David Montgomery, I just play those guys in the absence of any information of Tracy. But again, if we know Singletary is out, Tracy's going up from 22 to number 14 in the running back rankings. Ramondre Stevenson is out, with Drake May starting at quarterback for the Patriots in a not a great matchup with a terrible offensive line against the Houston Texans. I have Antonio Gibson at number 26 in the running back rankings. He's like a decent plug and play if you need it, but it's not something I'd be actively going out of my way to target in this game. Nick Chubb is going to be out for the Browns, so Jerome Ford will once again be the primary starter with Donta Foreman working as the backup. Neither of them are fantastic starts. The highest one I have ranked is Jerome Ford at number 27 in the running back rankings. Gus Edwards is out. So Vidal is going to work as the primary backup to J.K. Dobbins. It's not a great matchup against Denver, but it should be full workload go for J.K. Dobbins coming off that bye week, so he should be fully healthy in this game. We still don't know the status of Joe Alt or Slater. They both might end up playing. Alt looks like he's, I wouldn't say most definitely playing, but he's probably going to be in. Slater, we still don't know. So their offensive line could be operating at full strength, which would be a huge boon for J.K. Dobbins in this game. He is number 13 in the running back rankings. Rashad White is expected to be out with a foot injury against the Saints. So Bucky Irving time. This is the guy that you go and target right now. So Bucky Irving, I have number 12 in the running back rankings. He's a low-end running back one. He should garner 75 to 90% of the running back touches. Sean Tucker will probably work as the backup to him. Not sure what his role is going to be. Obviously, they're favorites in this game with Spencer Rattler starting on the other side of the ball and Derek Carr being injured for the Saints. You can run on the Saints. We saw Kareem Hunt do that on Monday Night Football the last time that we saw them play. It's still a short week for the Saints, so they're a little bit undermanned at the moment. So I can see this being full go for Bucky Irving this week. And I do like the Bucky Irving higher rushing yards on Underdog correlated with the Mike Evans lower targets on Underdog as well, if that was a way that you wanted to play that game. And I still like all the Saints enough. Like, it's not like they were lighting it up with Derek Carr, and Taysom Hill's going to be out for them as well. I like Shaheed slightly more than I like Olave in this game, but Bucky Irving at $5,400 on DraftKings would be my preferred pay down guy if you're looking to save money. Like, Gibson's a little bit cheaper. Javonte Williams is in that range. I would just say screw those guys. Play Bucky Irving. We know he's getting the goal line touches against a weaker run defense in a game where they're favored. That is a great opportunity. With Gibson, yeah, he might handle all of the workload, but Drake May might end up with more rushing yards than he does. How many times are the Patriots realistically going to have goal line opportunities to punch it in here? Probably not so many, based on their track record so far this season. The biggest one to really watch out for right now is Brian Robinson. So Brian Robinson is a game time decision for the game that everyone wants a piece of with Baltimore and Washington. It's starting to look like he's not going to play. Now, he didn't practice last week, and he got in the game, and he scored the touchdowns, and still had a pretty crappy fantasy day, to be perfectly honest. When you can't score 15 points when you score 2 touchdowns, we're going back to like Jerome Bettis, 5 carries for 3 yards and 3 touchdown type days where, yeah, you got real lucky to score fantasy points, but if it doesn't go your way in that circumstance, then you're absolutely screwed. So I love Austin Eckler this week. Even if Brian Robinson ends up in, we know that he's not going to handle the majority of the workload. Yes, Jeremy McNichols may work as the primary goal line back should Robinson sit. There's always that part of it. But if this game is going to be very high scoring, and with Washington's 6.5-point underdogs, expect throwing to happen in this game. That's when Eckler is going to be used anyway. Plus, he's going to see extra touches as a result of Brian Robinson being a bit banged up. I have Austin Eckler's number 9 in the running back rankings right now, and that'll be with or without Brian Robinson starting. McNichols is a back-end flex play. If you really need someone to start, I'd go out of my way not to start him. I prefer Justice Hill as a backup running back on the other side of the ball over McNichols, but I can see where some of that upside comes in for him. With Eckler, he's my favorite underdog play of the week on Sunday. 7.75 fantasy points is where he's at. It's half-point PPR scoring on underdog, but if you can just pile up, 4 for 30 through the air and pile on another 30 on the ground, you're well over that total. If you sneak into the end zone, it's almost a guaranteed winner at that point, and they're still hedging that Brian Robinson's going to play. But like I said, whether Robinson plays or not, that higher on Eckler is the main piece of my underdog play coming up a little bit later on this show. You can always hit the time codes for that or hit up the Saturday night newsletter where you can find all of the plays in there. It's completely free to join as well using code Mayo. James Cook, we don't know for sure, but I don't think he's playing on Monday night against the Jets, so I've taken him out of the rankings. It's not, the run defense for the Jets is weaker than the pass defense for the Jets, but it's hard to figure out how this offense is going to operate. I currently have Shakir in for the Bills, but if he is out too, if you're missing Cook and Shakir, your 2 best playmakers, it's not going to be a good look for the Bills offense. So I have, where's he at? I have Ray Davis at number 21 in the running back rankings right now. If you want to, obviously you'll know about Tracy and Singletary before that. So maybe I should move Davis down to 22, Tracy up to number 21, because that's a game after we'll know that information about what Tracy didn't do, and what the playing time is looking like going into that game. But I'd see Ray Davis as the primary ball handler, Ty Johnson working out of the backfield. If they fall behind in the game, it's bad news for Davis because we're not quite sure how he is on blocking assignments. We know that Ty Johnson can do that and be a very capable receiver out of the backfield if they need him. So I'll have the full update on Monday morning when I run through the injury report after the games and do the picks for Monday Night Football, but I do not expect James Cook to play. If you have him, start trying to figure other things out right now. Guys that look like they are going to be in, mentioned Trey Sermon, Joe Mixon looks like he's going to play, Zach Moss going to play, Foreman, Etienne, Damian Pierce will be back along with Mixon against the Patriots. The Mixon situation is a bit tricky. Like if I knew that he was full go for sure, like he's not officially in as of this recording, but he is expected to play. I wouldn't expect like a 30 carry game from Joe Mixon. You might be looking at like 10 to 15 touches from him, maybe at best. And with Pierce back, maybe you work him into the mix a little bit as well. And you know that Dare is still going to be the passing down running back, but as giant favorites against the Patriots, there's probably going to be less passing in this game than you would expect. So Pierce a little bit down. Mixon I have just inside the top 20, but you could talk me out of that if you really wanted to. I don't have a ton of Joe Mixon, so it's not really affecting any of my teams, but I'd be pensive plugging him back in my lineup as like a super stud. A low-end number 2 running back? Sure. a number one running back this week? Maybe not because of workload concerns. A-Chain expected to be back next week. Aaron Jones probably going to be out, so if Ty Chandler is still out there, go pick him up right now. Jonathan Brooks, we do not know as of yet, has not been designated to return, so as long as that's going, Chuba Hubbard continues to be the running back that you want to be playing every single week. At wide receiver, this one is difficult. Michael Pittman was reported to potentially be going on injured reserve. Then all of a sudden on Friday, he's a full participant in practice and he's trying to play, with the caveat that the Colts told us that he still might go on injured reserve. I don't understand this whatsoever. This is going to be a game where Michael Pittman either has 8 catches for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns when he's on your bench, and if you start him, he's going to play 2 snaps and not do anything. I can't in good conscience put him in my lineup this week. If you want to trot him out in daily fantasy on DraftKings because no one else is going to play him, go waste your money. I don't care on that one. And it might work out to your benefit, but in your season-long league, you got to have better options than a potential Michael Pittman active, plays a snap, comes out, hurts himself again, or just doesn't play at all. There's still that, and he gets placed on IR before the game too. Josh Downs does look like he is going to play, though. Through this toe injury, he was back at practice on Friday, so you can play Josh Downs with some confidence. I don't think he has as much upside as other people seem to think. Where do I have him? I have Josh Downs at number 41 in the rankings. Frankly, I think Alec Pierce is about as good of a play, and the chunk yardage that comes along with Alec Pierce, especially if you have a limited Michael Pittman in this game too. It's just not a game I love to target, especially with Richardson being banged up, Taylor being out. Just the Colts offense is in flux, and there's so many random dudes. It could be Ashton Doolin. It could be Kyle Granson. Mo Alleycocks could end up with the touchdown. There's just a lot of potential for things to go wrong and not a ton of upside to go around. That's why I prefer Pierce out of all these guys, because if he does hit, it's going to be a big hit. And people are playing A.D. Mitchell, that could be great. That could be 2 catches for 8 yards as well. At least with Downs, you could probably be like, yeah, 5 for 50 sounds about like a floor, but the upside is like 8 for 89, and hopefully he scores a touchdown. So you need to take that in consideration. Plus, he is dealing with a toe injury, so he might not be 100% as well. Malik Neighbors is going to be out for Sunday Night Football in a dream matchup against the Bengals. I have both Slayton and Wendell Robinson inside my top 20 at running or at wide receiver right now. I use them on 2 separate entries on running on Underdog, but I like the higher on yardage for both them. Wendell's just in the mid-50s. I like the higher on that. Slayton's 48.5. I like the higher on that as well. I like Slayton's higher than fantasy points, too. Maybe it's going back to the well once too often, but this game should be, per the point total, should be very high scoring. We've seen Cincinnati's defense be absolutely god-awful, and we've seen Slayton with Wendell Robinson and Daniel Jones just a week ago be very effective in this spot without Malik Neighbors. That tree is very loaded and very narrow. So that's always one of the great things that we can find in an offense when it comes to projecting fantasy, is that we know where the ball is going to go in that offense. It's a lot like the Panthers offense. Hey, they're going to hand it off to Chuba. They're going to give it to Deontay Johnson through the air. At least that's what they're going to try to do. That sort of concentration is very valuable when trying to project this stuff out. So even if you put Wendell Robinson and Darius Slayton together with 2 hires on their receiving yards and find one other play, you put it with that Austin Eckler hire. There's the 3-banger. That'll pay 6-1. I like the Jared Goff lower passing attempts, which gets like 33.5. It's not a number he's sniffed so far this season. He's been very efficient, and they love running the ball in Detroit. If they can stay ahead in this game, and they are favorites against Dallas, so you put those 4 together, all of a sudden you're looking at a 10-1 on your hands. You use code Mayo at Underdog right now, get yourself a deposit bonus of up to $1,000, and take advantage of that. Okay? So Neighbors is out. Those 2 guys inside the top 20. Zay Jones is going to be out for the Cardinals, so I did move Michael Wilson back up a little bit inside to the top 50. Robert Woods is going to be out. Obviously, Nico Collins is on injured reserve. One of my favorite plays is actually Stefan Diggs lower than 9.5 targets in this game. He went well over in his revenge situation against the Vikings a few weeks back, but as 7-point favorites. Now, the Texans haven't been great at covering big numbers. They keep winning games, but not by giant margin. So maybe this game ends up being a lot closer than I would expect it to be, but as a touchdown favorite in this game, expect more running, be it through Mixon, Pierce, Dare, Akers, whoever it is, and a lean back on the passing game. I still like Hutchinson, who's filling in for Nico Collins right now, I don't love him. I have number 40 in the wide receiver rankings. That's behind Diggs. That's behind Tank Dell, but he's $3,300 on DraftKings. If you need a cheap player to go to this week on the main slate, that is where I would be going to save all of the money. He's my favorite of the paydown options. Now, it could be useless because, like I just said, the Texans might not have to throw a bunch in this game. Or maybe for whatever reason, Christian Gonzalez just takes a look at the field and says, you know what? That X guy, that's the guy they need to take out. Hutchinson. Don't worry about Diggs. Don't worry about Dell. Don't worry about Schultz. It's that Hutchinson guy I need to lock down. That's probably not going to happen, which is good news if you play him at 3,300 and need to stream him through your lineup. But again, I don't think that the passing volume in this game is going to be super high, especially in the second half, if that's what we're looking at. Josh Reynolds is out for the Broncos right now. Trey Palmer is out for the Buccaneers, although Jalen McMillan looks like he's going to end up playing here. He's still a game time decision, but with that hamstring injury that he missed last Thursday he could be back for this game. Christian Watson is still a game time decision. Romeo Doubs is going to play. I still just love Jaden Reed in this game. Higher than 10.5 fantasy points on Underdog for Jaden Reed. Just fire him up every single week, especially against the weak Arizona defense. How everyone else shakes out, this I do not know, especially if Watson gets back into the mix as well. I'd go lowers on like out of anyone that you wouldn't want to play. I get that Watson might end up being the deep guy and catches a big one against Arizona if he's active, but a lot like the Michael Pittman situation where he could just re-aggravate his ankle. He might not get a full snap load, and then you just would not want to play him. So he's just a big X for me this week. In terms of the actual rankings of Packers receivers, it's Reed well above everyone else. After that, it would actually be Kraft, then Wicks, then Dobbs, if that's the way that you wanted to rank them out this week in the order that you were trying to play them in. Khalil Shakir is questionable for Monday Night Football. I have him in the rankings right now. He's number 35 in the rankings, but he could just beat it very quickly if he does not practice again on Saturday. That's what the update in the newsletter will be covering in terms of the rankings and injury report, if we can get that news about the Bills guys. And it's not a great matchup either, although he runs the type of routes that you can take advantage of the Jets defense. He's not going to be on the outside primarily. He's going to run a lot of crossing routes underneath stuff. So he should be able to pile up a lot of volume if that's the case. If it's not him, I don't think that there's a Bills receiver that honestly you would want to start. Maybe bet Mac Hollins for first touchdown or anytime touchdown, but that would be it. Like Coleman might get matched up on Sauce or Reed, and what is he going to have? One catch for 43 yards and a touchdown every single week? That's a tough thing to bank on, don't you think? Yeah, that's not where I'd be going. And who knows with Josh Allen? They just released a statement with the NFL and the NFLPA about his concussion protocol, that everything was actually handled properly, but he looked a bit rattled in that game. I know he gets the extra day of rest, it being Monday Night Football, but Allen has never really played that well against the Jets, and now missing basically all of his good weapons. It might not be a great situation for him. Other than that, Cooper Kupp should return next week. Brandon Cook's still on IR, and Nico Collins was placed on injured reserve as well. For almost about 2 decades, the irons were really the only good part of my golf game, unless you include 300-yard drives, which meant hitting it about 150 yards straight and 150 yards with slice into the woods to the right. So I finally went and got lessons, straightened out my swing, and all of a sudden I could drive the ball pretty decently, pretty straight. And then my irons just kind of went wayward with the new compression that I was getting onto the ball. So it was time for me to make a change with my irons. So when I heard about the new PXG Black Ops irons and how they can dramatically improve my game, I had to give them a try. Booked a fitting with the PXG location, brought in my current irons, and took the PXG challenge. The staff was amazing. We worked on my ball flight through TrackMan in order to find the perfect irons and the perfect length and the perfect loft for what my game demands these days. And the new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit, they maximize performance, and they're fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That is a great price for a great golf iron. So take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $250 MasterCards reward card. Hurry, this offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. At tight end, Taysom Hill is out for the Saints. If you need to stream Juwan Johnson, God love you. I don't love his upside here. Maybe he catches a touchdown. I would prefer to stream Hunter Henry and take the risk that Drake May has a good connection with his tight end in his first career start where he has to get the ball out very quickly. Like Pop Douglas and, maybe it's Jalen Polk and he is able to catch one of these huge bombs down the field. But with no offensive line and a huge pressure rate coming from Houston, I would expect the ball to get out quickly or a lot of running from Drake May. So the lower ADOT players in terms of receptions and fantasy points is where I'd be looking at if I was forced to play a Patriot. Now, if you have Kelsey on bye week or you have an injury at tight end, then all of a sudden then you could play Hunter Henry. I have him ranked as number 11. I think he's the best streamer for the week, but you have to understand he might be 2 for 20 as well in this game. That tight ends just aren't good, but there could be volume to be mined in this new situation as big underdogs with a new quarterback in these low ADOT routes for Hunter Henry. A reliable hand for Drake May to get the ball to. Michael Mayer is out. He has been placed on the NFL list. He's going through a personal matter. No idea what it is. I'd inquire to what it is, but it's not my business. It is a personal matter for him. Brock Bowers, number 3 in the tight end rankings this week, even with Aiden O'Connell playing quarterback. Tommy Tremble is out for the Carolina Panthers, so Jatavion Sanders will get a chance to start again unless Ian Thomas is able to come back. But you don't need to concern yourself with those guys because you don't want to play them anyway. Evan Ingram, as I mentioned before, is expected to play in the London game. Fortunately, we'll know about that right away. I have Evan Ingram number 7 in the tight end rankings this week, so now that he's back, there are so few good options that you got to get him back in your lineup. Hawkinson expected to be back for the Vikings in Week 7, and Luke Musgrave was placed on injured reserve for the Green Bay Packers. At quarterback, Derek Carr is out. The Rattler is starting. If you watched the DraftKings show I did with Tambo on Friday, you know that I'm playing some Spencer Rattler lineups. He's $4,000. If he can do anything, the Bucs defense isn't good, so just pair him up with Shaheed. Be on your way. That's just over $9,000 of your total salary. You throw Bucky Irving in at $5,400. You have a quarterback, you have a wide receiver, and a running back that costs you less than $1,400 of your $50,000. Then you can play Barkley, or you can play A.J. Brown, or you can play Derrick Henry, or load up on all of the games that you want to load up on, and you just have to hope that Spencer Rattler doesn't crap down his leg the entire game. He can just do anything. If he can get himself to like 15 DraftKings points, hell, if he gets a 20 DraftKings points or just throws a touchdown to Shaheed, you are looking good. And Tambo and I talked a lot about how the lineups are going to go and what the preferred builds are going to be. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on in this show when I talk about the DraftKings ownership. But there's going to be a lot of similar lineups. And what I'm seeing right now is that the high-end running backs simply are not being used because they are too expensive. And everyone wants Lamar and Jaden Daniels, and to jam in all the high price guy from that game in particular, or the Detroit and Dallas game, or load up on Eagles, or load up on Falcons. It just, you can't get all the way up to Saquon, to Henry, or even Alvin Kamara in this game, who I don't love because he's coming in with an injury. The injury designation is gone for Kamara, but he's dealing with something, and he just has not been effective the past few games. Basically, when Taysom Hill doesn't play, this offense doesn't look very good, and as I just mentioned, Taysom Hill is not playing in this game. Anthony Richardson is likely starting for the Colts. Not a guarantee, but he is likely starting. Levis is back as the Tennessee quarterback. Great news for everyone. Aiden O'Connell is going to start. Jacoby Myers is a game-time decision at receiver in that game. I don't think you really want to be starting anyone besides Brock Bowers in the offense for the Raiders against the Steelers this week. Drake May is starting for the New England Patriots as well. Code Mayo at Underdog right now will get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And I've talked through some of the ones that I like so far this week for your entry. So the London game, again, was Christian Kirk lower receiving yards, Caleb Williams higher passing yards. For the main slate, I mentioned Austin Eckler is my single favorite one of the week, and he's going to be used in this 3-play lineup that I'm going through right now. Austin Eckler higher than 7.75 fantasy points against the Baltimore Ravens, and I like that whether Brian Robinson is in or not. We're getting a discount on his fantasy points because they have not ruled Brian Robinson out yet. So this is what his median is going to be. If Brian Robinson doesn't play, this number is going to go up to like 11.5, 12.5. So you can get yourself some nice value right now. I just don't think that outside of the goal line work that we're going to see much Brian Robinson at all. Wendell Robinson higher than 53.5 receiving yards. Now, it's going to be like 2 yards per catch, presumably, against the Bengals, but it could be like 13 catches. This is just what we've been seeing in catch-up mode from the Giants. Even when they're winning, they continue to throw a ton too. So you, as I mentioned before, you could even mix in Wendell Robinson And you could mix in Darius Slayton into both their hires and then find someone on the Bengals side of the ball that you want to go to as well if you just wanted to isolate that game. But for this entry, it's Wendell higher than 53.5 receiving yards. And I mentioned Jaden Reed is my favorite of all of the Green Bay players this week, higher than 10.55 fantasy points for him. They get him involved on the ground. They take deep shots with him, and he gets chunk yardage, and he can make guys miss. He is the perfect X factor for the Packers in this game against a pretty crappy Cardinals defense. Let's be perfectly honest here. So that's a 3-play. That pays 6-1. You can scan the QR code on the screen right now, or just use code Mayo at Underdog to get yourself the deposit bonus of up to $1,000. If you want to tail these picks in particular for that entry or the 20-1 I have coming up, subscribe to the newsletter that will be sent out on Saturday evening. It's completely free to join, and all of the rankings and information and injury report cheat sheets are all in there right now too. Hit that down in the description, or Mayo Media on Substack. Okay, thank you on that one. Here's the other one. This one's fun. I've mentioned all these ones before except for one. Jared Goff, I mentioned 33.5 passing attempts, lower against the Dallas Cowboys as a favorite. Expect a lot of Gibbs, expect a lot of Montgomery in this game, and high efficiency passing, especially with the depleted pass rush of the Dallas Cowboys. Darius Slayton, higher than 6 targets in the Sunday Night Football game. Again, if you think this is high scoring or the Giants have to play catch-up mode, he skyrockets this number. I have him projected for 8.5 targets in this game, so higher than 6. Love it. Rico Dowdle, higher than 11 rushing attempts. So the one thing about this is kind of correlated with the lower Jared Goff passing attempts as well, that maybe this isn't as high scoring as people think, and as working as the primary running back, you just have to hope Dallas doesn't get way behind early. So if they get way behind early, that's probably good for the Jared Goff lowers, maybe not great for the Dowdle hires, but 11 is just such a low number for a starting running back in a game where we know that they're going to try to pound the ball. They're going to try to keep the ball out of the air and keep the clock moving. So Dowdle could potentially get this all in the first half, and that's probably what you're looking for. You need him to get 8 or 9 in the first half, and then just through attrition, whether it's a third and long against a prevent defense, or they're running in garbage time, Dowdle's going to be the one out there. So the higher on 11 rushing attempts for him. I put Eckler back on 7.75 higher fantasy points, and I mentioned the Steph Diggs lower than 9.5 targets. Yes, Collins is out. No, the Texans probably do not have to pass a ton in this game. They can run all over the Patriots, and if they get up, you're not going to see a ton of running from them anyway. All right? Code Mayo at Underdog right now. You can play along with me. You can fade me on all these too. That's not been a bad strategy so far this season with the picks that I've been giving out on the show, but that last one that I gave pays 20-1. The first one pays 6-1, and you can use your bonus up to that as well. Plus, there is a profit boost on Underdog right now of a 31% if you use code Mayo, so you can get on that and juice this 21 to 20-1 up to, what would that be, 25-1? Hey, free money, or at least free value, free EV on Underdog right now with code Mayo, okay? Ownership on DraftKings is still pretty difficult to figure out at the moment to see when sites all get updated, especially Run the Sims, which I'm drawing from in terms of ownership, because we're still seeing not necessarily stale ownership lines, but it has not really accounted for a lot of the running backs that have been taken out as of right now. Like how many people are going to play Antonio Gibson or Bucky Irving, or does that mean they come off of Javonte Williams and Najee Harris? How does Najee Harris get affected by Jalen Warren playing? These are all still things in flux right now. Once we see more simulations, more optimizers come out, that'll give us a better feeling. So I'll have all of that update in the Saturday evening newsletter. Please go subscribe to that, completely free, down in the description right now, or go to Substack under Mayo Media and you can find it there. Justin will have the very handy cheat sheet put out. But what I'm seeing right now is 3 running backs in particular that stand out in terms of ownership over everyone else. Pollard, Bijan Robinson, and Chuba Hubbard. 66, 63, 6,000. This is what I was talking about earlier, where I said that no one's really playing the very highest end of running back this week, just because it's cost prohibitive. Barkley's 82, Derrick Henry is 8,000. And then you have Alvin Kamara at 77, Jahmyr Gibbs at 7,000. Mixon's at 69. It's just we don't know what his workload's going to be. He shouldn't be priced that high for this week, knowing what his workload could be, or hell, he might not even play at this point, although he's still seeing like 3% ownership. Like Kamara is the one generating the most interest because the passing attack on Baltimore and the passing attack on the Eagles is where the majority of players seem to be going. So Barkley's only coming in at like 12%, so is Derrick Henry. But again, you need to make the rosters work with him and trying to find the cheap guys. So at running back, the cheap plays right now, and we're thinking points per dollar, it's Bucky Irving. Like, I'm jamming Bucky Irving in as much as I can across all my lineups. Right now, he's projected at 7% ownership. I think that number goes way up by the time Sunday comes along. The good thing is, in terms of optimal rate, he's punching out as the highest running back of the week at 18%. So as long as he stays below 18%, he's a plus EV play in your lineups, and he is a way where you can start to save money. All of the other cheap running backs I really don't like. Yes, J.K. Dobbins at $6,200 I think is a better play than Chuba Hubbard at $28. I like Hubbard better, but it's pretty close when it gets down to it. I like J.K. Dobbins way more than I like Tony Pollard against the Colts. Like, Pollard could be good. Tajee Spears could have a big game. Maybe Will Levis just fumbles every single time. So these would be the guys that I'd be trying to target. Bucky Irving everywhere, one of Barkley and Henry, if you can jam them in. I also really like A.J. Brown, who not a lot of players are going to this week as well. Gibbs is another one. 9% Gibbs in a super high total game. Everyone wants Amon-Ra. Everyone's using Jamison Williams. Or Rico Dowdle ends up becoming the cheaper play that you want to go with. $7,000 is pretty good for Jahmyr Gibbs in that game. So I would say that if you can find the money for it, using one of these higher end running backs and not falling into that $6,000 tier of Jacobs, of Chuba Hubbard, Bijan, that range where everyone else is gravitating towards, is personally where I would go. Now, I've been getting my ass handed to me on DraftKings most weeks, so maybe I am not the person you want to follow, but trying to theorize how this should work and giving yourself the best opportunity to get to the top, that's the route that I would be taking right now. The other running backs projected for a bunch of ownership, Najee is still up there right now, so is Josh Jacobs and J.K. Dobbins at 13%. With Najee and Warren being back, I'm just not using him. $5,800, there's better running backs for cheaper, beyond Bucky Irving at this point. Like, Gibson is going to garner some ownership as well down in that range, but I don't know if I'd really want to go that route. So that's how it's looking right now at running back. Points per dollar wise at running back. Once again, we have Bucky Irving well above the pack. Austin Eckler is second. He's $5,600, and he is going to be right around, like, his projected ownership right now is 1%. That'll get higher, especially if Brian Robinson news of him being out happens. But Eckler's a pretty good play at sub 5% with everything that I've detailed so far in this show. And those are the cheaper running backs that you can get away from if you wanted to pay up at some of the other spots. Like, that gets you, again, off Dobbins, Hubbard, Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Pollard, all that range of more expensive guys. These guys are just as good and they're cheaper, and it seems like people are using them in far fewer lineups as well. So that's the upside that I like in terms of optimal rate. Irving, Saquon, J.K. Dobbins, Bijan, and Gibbs are the top 5 that appear in the most optimal lineups after 10,000 simulations. At wide receiver, it's going to be pretty dictated on who ends up getting stacked the most, but you can kind of tell based on some of these ownership percentages where players are stacking this week. And when you take a look at the projected ownership, Drake London, Deontay Johnson project to be the 2 highest owned on the slate right now. Well, I bet you people are going to be using Kirk Cousins along with it. Darnell Mooney projects at 16%. Well, I can tell you there's going to be a lot of stacks of Cousins, London, Mooney with Deontay Johnson as the bring back, or with Chuba Hubbard as the bring back. That's just very logical to think about it that way. Amon-Ra projects out at around 17%. Lamb is way down the list. Jaden Reed projects out as 18%. So the Goff, Brown lineups, Jaden Reed, Love lineups going to be pretty prevalent. Zay Flowers rates out pretty highly as well at 16%. That is the Raven that it seems like people are preferring to use this week because he's the one with the most safety. He and Henry with Lamar. You don't want to play Henry with Lamar, but Zay with Lamar is going to be a very popular combination. Ditto for Ertz and Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin all at the same time. Chris Godwin and Ray McLeod. Like, Ray McLeod still projects out at 15% too. So maybe if people don't use Drake London or don't use Darnell Mooney, they save the money at $4,300 with Ray McLeod. I like Ray McLeod, but if 15% of the field is going to use him, I am not going to use him as my paydown option. Instead, I'll just use Xavier Hutchinson, like I talked about. It could be a terrible play, but he's $3,300. He doesn't need to do that much this week. In terms of what the projections are telling us, points per dollar, Sterling Shepard at 33, but that's not accounting for Jaden McMillan potentially being back. Jalen Coker at 3,000 in that same Atlanta game for Carolina, but Legette's projected to play as well. He's in. Deontay Johnson's in. Coker got some extra run last week, got activated when Legette left the game. He actually looked really good, so maybe he is an upside play at $3,000. I just happen to prefer Xavier Hutchinson against the Patriots, just because I know the role that he's going to play and that he is going to be on the field, especially with Robert Woods also being out along with Nico Collins in this game. When we take a look at optimals, Jaden Reed, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Terry McLaurin, right out as the top 5 optimal plays of the week. The problem is Deontay Johnson and Drake London's optimal leverage is weighed down because they're just frankly being over-owned versus their optimal rate. Yeah, Drake London is second in optimal rate at 18%. He's 25% projected owned. That gives him a -8 score when it comes to it. The optimal leverage leaders, Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy, and A.J. Brown. My favorite stack of the week is Hurts with A.J. Brown, so that's the route that I'm going this week. I didn't expect coming off a bye week and getting everyone healthy again would get everyone off of Jalen Hurts. I understand that he has not looked good. He has not had his full complement of weapons or a healthy offensive line. So whether you're using Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Goddard together, I'm just doing Hurts and A.J. Brown. Those are the two that I want to target. Or play Barkley because he might rush in 3 touchdowns and steal everything away from them. I just think that the Eagles are primed to be mined for fantasy points this week against this terrible Browns team who looks like they've given up, yet no one wants to go to them. Kind of shocking, to tell you the truth. Marvin Harrison Jr. also a very good leverage score because no one is using him against the Packers this week. I'm personally using McBride as my run back in my Packers stack, but I can see how you can get to Marv. He's just very expensive at $7,200. Tight end ownership, it's all concentrating around the same people. Jake Ferguson, 22% owned. That is double the next player, which is Cade Otton at 11%. You're seeing Ertz get bumped up a little bit. No one knows which of the Ravens tight ends to use as a part of that game stack, so they're just using Ertz as the cheap play on the other side to save money. If you wanted to use Likely, that would likely be the best opportunity for max fantasy points. But we've just seen how this Ravens offense rolls. You just can pick wrong so easily. But there is a ton of upside to go with him this week. So we have Ferguson, Otton. They're the only two projecting at double digits. After that's Freiermuth, McBride, Ertz, Tucker Kraft, Kyle Pitts. And then like Jatavion Sanders at 2,600. Like that's just a pure punt play off the board. I don't love many of the punt tight ends this week. Hunter Henry, I mentioned before, would be the one that I would want to go with. But Jake Ferguson is not only the highest owned and $5,000. He is the highest optimal tight end this week too, coming in the optimal lineup 18% of the time. So the best points per dollar plays, you have Ferguson, Sanders, Ertz, Otton, and Bowers. And when we take a look at the optimal rates, it's Ferguson, then Bowers, Njoku, Goddard, and Zach Ertz. But Zach Ertz at $3,700 is going to be pretty popular because he's a part of the main game stack, and he is the cheap option that allows you to afford a lot of these other guys. Defensively, it's going to probably be the Titans. Guessing is going to be the highest owned. The Bucks, the Eagles, and the Titans. Those three are the concentrations depending on how much money that you have left. $3,400 for the Eagles, $26 for the Bucks, $28 for the Titans. I don't know if I necessarily love the Buccaneers. There's not a great fantasy defense. Maybe Rattler just is so bad he just gives up the ball the entire time. But I don't know if I'd want to be going and eating the chalk defense of the Buccaneers at $2,600. I feel better about the Titans at $28. I really like the Packers at $3,100. That's where I would be going. A lot of people jamming in the Ravens as well just to get access to that game. As Tambo always points out and did break down on the Friday DraftKings show, that sometimes if you're not stacking up the Washington and Baltimore game and you don't have any pieces from it, just taking a defense and hopefully that game gets screwy gives you leverage against everyone else who used those guys. Because if you needed them, then it doesn't matter anyway. But if you didn't need them, maybe the defense. Because if the defense scores twice, then Lamar isn't scoring, then Henry isn't scoring, then Flowers isn't scoring, and you have all of those points in your lineup. So you get a boost, and the other side just stays stagnant. That's a good situation to be in. I personally don't like the Ravens defense, because why would you this week against Jaden Daniels, who doesn't really throw interceptions or get sacked? Other than that, let's see here. Points per dollar wise, who rates out the best? It is the Patriots at $2,400. The Steelers at $37 is actually second. It's hard to find the money to get up to them, but $3,700 for them and $3,600 for the Texans would be the two places I'd be trying to get to. But again, I just talked about all the expense. I'd rather have the expensive running back over having the expensive defense, put it that way. But the Steelers right now projected ownership is 1% because no one can afford them. So if there is a leverage spot to be had, it'd be paying up for defense this week. Let me see where the Texans project at 5%. That's not bad either. Even the Colts against Tennessee, only 2% because they're a little bit higher. So you have on the other side, Tennessee one of the highest owned. The Colts now looking like one of the lowest owned defense, albeit at a higher price point. But $3,100 isn't crazy to go spending on your D. You could have that much left. So Packers, Colts, or pay up Texans and Steelers are really where I'm going this week in terms of my lineups. Other than that, like if I had to pay down, I'd probably just use the Cardinals at $2,500 and hopefully Love is not immune to bad decision making, and the Cardinals defense, while not being good, can be relatively opportunistic, and they have a lot of speed on their defense. If they do get a pick or a fumble return, they can return it pretty quickly. We've seen that. I mean, we almost saw it against San Francisco or Detroit, but it didn't count, although it should have counted. But we've just seen them pile up some decent defense fantasy totals so far this year. They're almost the lowest price defense. If you're in a pinch, that would be the cheap D that I'd be going to this week. Sub to the channel. Smash like while you're here. I'll be back Sunday night with Meanie and Cust. I won't be in studio. I'll be here because it is Canadian Thanksgiving, and I do want to spend that with my family after the early set of games, but we're all going to be joining you. So all Canadians, if you're done your Thanksgiving dinner, tune in. For Americans, business as usual on Sunday Night Football with the three of us. So we're going to be recapping the games, guessing the lines, and giving out some underdog plays as well. If you want to get in on the underdog game, code Mayo, an underdog right now. All right? The newsletter will come out on Saturday evening, so please go sub for free to get all the up-to-date information. Okay? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!